welcome to MTG Speculator Podcast, episode number 28. Today is Thursday, April 27th, 2017. I'm Massimo, and welcome Sam to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
Sam, it's been a while since you've been on.
Yeah, it's been, I missed the last episode, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Me and Massimo were testing, and then we were both really busy. You talked about this last week, I think.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. But sorry I wasn't here last time, but I'm back.
Yeah, we're back full time, and Sam, we were gonna do our, standard testing results podcast.
Yeah.
But then, 2 days ago, emergency banning fell at our Guardian happened.
So I was actually testing with a friend, and we were playing Saheeli combo, and someone came up and they were like, "Oh my god, did you hear Saheeli's being banned?" And we didn't believe it. So we both pulled out our phones, and then we realized it was true, and then we're scooped up the cards. We're like, alright. My friend just starts de-sleeving. He's just like, alright. But yeah, it's huge. So it's kind of like a 2-deck format before the ban. So that's where we're at right now. There's Mardu and Saheeli. And they kind of had each other's back. So you'd have Saheeli kind of taking out the mid-range decks that are really good against Mardu.
Yeah.
And you had Mardu just out-aggroing any decks that were built to deal with the infinite combo. But now that Saheeli's gone, sort of the floodgates have been open for these mid-range decks that can beat Mardu to kind of pour in. And right now, until at least there's a response in the meta, I think that there's a good chance that, we're going to see a lot of green-black coming back for sure. And possibly some other cool stuff as well. Yeah.
So I'm kind of glad this happened. There's pros and cons with the banning, especially for the podcast, because we kind of figured out what the meta was doing. We were pretty sure it was just Mardu and Saheeli with some new tweaks and stuff. But now that the banning happened, our content is a lot more uncertain. So because it's only been a couple days and we've only had a little bit of time to test, take everything we say with a grain of salt. But from our initial impressions and what we were expecting, this is kind of what we come up with. So we've got just some interesting discussion topics and decks that you might want to be interested in hearing about, and the sort of rock, paper, scissors metagame we're thinking is going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's also just worth noting that even though this is sort of a new meta, we did see something kind of similar to this. There was a period where Jeskai Control Saheeli was a big deck, so it was sort of like Jeskai Control, Green Black, and Mardu. Mm-hmm. And then there was a period, this is in last standard, where Jeskai Control sort of disappeared for a while. It started getting on by these other decks.
Yeah.
As they got more refined. And 4-color Saheeli wasn't being played much, and then Jeskai Saheeli disappeared. And we had a period for a little while where it was just Green Black and Mardu. And I feel like that's sort of where what we're entering into right now. I think we're going to see a lot of Mardu and a lot of Green Black at the SCG Opens this weekend, and then there's going to be some cool responses as well. But I don't think this is that absurd of a change. It's just one card, and I think that this is a lot easier to manage in terms of thinking about it than a big rotation. I think it's definitely up in the air, but there's also a lot that we can look back on previous standards and sort of think about and have a good idea of what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent comparison, actually. You're definitely right that there was sort of a period where Mardu was the prominent deck, and then Black-Green was the prominent deck, and then Jeskai Saheeli was the prominent deck, and there was this kind of rotation of decks of what was good and what was beating the other decks on the weekends.
There was a point where Green Black was almost 40% of the meta. I think 35% for a few weeks.
And then it dropped to eventually dropped to 0%.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to give it a bit ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. Let's talk about the new stuff. I think the most important takeaway, as Sam said, is that this isn't, again, it's not a rotation. Yes, it feels very different because Saheeli Rai combo is gone, but we're essentially taking decks that are and were playable and just adding new pieces with some new interesting decks showing up, but not necessarily have a ton of promise.
Yeah, and I think the big thing to think about, just to frame the conversation and to frame sort of the way we approach the next standard, is that the infinite combo's gone. That sort of tension that was the deck that was preventing mid-range sorcery speed decks from being around is now gone. Mm-hmm. So that if you're going to think about what's going to get better, it's anything that was tapping out.
Yes,
it's going to get a lot better. Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about the best deck that we're pretty sure is going to end up as the best deck, just because it's very consistent and it's pretty much the same as before, just adding one new piece maybe. And this is Mardu Vehicles, to no one's surprise.
So I think Ballista is probably going to be gone from the list. That's my opinion. And I think Gideon of the Trials is a great addition. I don't think it's a 4 of because Big Gideon is better.
I agree.
But I think it's a 2 of maybe. It didn't get that much other great stuff. I mean, Glorybringer is an option, but Avacyn's also like a pretty good card too.
Very good card, yeah.
So I think the deck's just very good. In my personal opinion, if you're playing a PPTQ this weekend, I would personally avoid Mardu for the next few weeks, just because I think that there's going to be a bunch of mid-range decks that kind of come and try to prey on the Mardu decks that don't have this Saheeli, kind of deck that's limiting them.
Yeah.
But there's going to be answers to that and like control, and the answers are going to be, Mardu's going to be really good at the answers. So I think you might want to wait a few weeks before picking Mardu up again, but I think it's going to end up, it's a great deck, and it's getting better, and it's just very powerful.
Yeah, it's proactive, and it has incredible threats. The new Gideon is pretty much delivering, I think, on power level. You probably want 2 Gideon of the Trials, and then 4 Gideon Ally of Zendikar. I tried 3 and 3, but I was like mostly unimpressed. Every turn after turn 3, you just hope it's Gideon Ally of Zendikar every time.
Yep. Cutting the Ballista is a big deal too. That card is horrible.
Yeah, it's not great. The problem is that it is an artifact, so now you're going to have to start running things like Pianalar again and stuff like that to like get your artifact count up. So it's a really interesting deck building decision, and which way it ends up going is actually very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had a solid solution, but I'm pretty sure right now I'm just running with the Ballista list, and I've been pretty happy with it. Ballista is a good catch-all. It's also a burn spell. It works well with Avacyn, and I just love Avacyn, but there's totally a reasonable argument to be made that you go back down to 23 lands, and you go back to Veteran Motorist.
Because, like, Veteran Motorist was pushed out of the format by Walking Ballista.
Yes,
mostly.
exactly.
And it's kind of interesting. So I could definitely see Mardu going back to perhaps a Vehicles version.
Yeah.
Again, I think that seems reasonable. It's faster. Does the Vehicles version do better against Green-Black? I think it does, right?
I would imagine it does, but I cannot remember now. I didn't play enough of that matchup at that time.
I wasn't playing the deck either at the time. I would think that it's probably better. It's definitely interesting. There's definitely an opportunity for Vehicles players to try out the Veteran Motorist package again, especially if we see Mardu just drop Ballista entirely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that deck's super good.
Yeah.
That version of the deck is really good.
Yeah, outside of Mardu Vehicles, I haven't found a huge space for Gideon of the Trials and Control. You really need to have the board clear for him to be good. So, I mean, you could do it in like Black-White Control or maybe Esper Control, where you're like turn 1 push, turn 2 grasp, turn 3 Gideon of the Trials. Seems like, a pretty strong curve out. But even then, it's like pretty lackluster most of the time. So there might be a day for it to be good in Control, but I don't think that day is right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
By the way, we are going to post our deck lists in the description of this video on the website and on Reddit, the Reddit post that we make promoting this episode. So do check those out. We do have some interesting stuff, particularly the green-white mid-range deck, which we will get to, that Sam has championed so far. But before we do that, let's talk about green-black mid-range and sort of like the new pieces that it's getting, and it's sort of like high consistency.
So again, we kind of touched on this at the beginning of the episode, but green-black is like really good. It's not really good against Mardu. No deck is really good against Mardu because it's just so powerful. But
yeah.
I feel like it definitely has a good matchup, and there's a bunch of different builds. One of them is a Delirium build.
Yes,
and that deck can definitely run the new Liliana. It's pretty good.
Yeah,
Ronus is another option. There's a lot of different ways you could explore green-black as well, and we could post some different versions.
Yeah, because there's the energy list,
yep,
which is sort of like more aggressively based, and then there's the Delirium list, which has more Traverse and Ishgana, and then there's sort of mid-range with Verdurous Gear Hulk. And the question is just like, is Lily going to fit in any of these shells? Is reanimating something decent, worth 5 mana? And it probably is, but I would imagine it fits more into like the Delirium version or something.
Ishgana just like destroys Mardu.
Yeah, it's still incredibly difficult for Mardu to beat.
I feel like one of the reasons that Delirium might not have been as popular before is that it's just slower, and it sort of generates like a lot of value later on in the game. But against an infinite combo, they generate infinite energy, infinite value late game. So
true.
It's possible that green-black Delirium list will actually be the one that ends up being more prominent now.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just doing like really powerful stuff.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like, Grimflayer is just so good.
Grimflayer is insane. Ishkana's, like, fetching Ishkanas are super good.
It's super, super good.
The new Lily is also like mills you for 2. It's sort of like, it's actually very strong.
It seems really, really good. Like, in any situation, it's just great. As long as you're getting back a creature. Like, Ishkana would be fantastic. If you can do the line where you mill Ishkana into your graveyard, get Delirium, turn 5, play Lily, and reanimate it, like, how do you beat that?
So, as someone who was playing a lot of Control, especially for the first half of the last Standard season, I know that Black Valyrian was a good matchup for us, but one of the reasons it was frustrating was, especially post-board, they could potentially outgrind you sometimes. So Control gets pulled from tomorrow, but New Lily reanimates a lot of stuff, and
Tireless Chapter.
They also have that 3-mana enchantment that scries 1, and then you pay green when you cast a creature.
Lifecrafter's Bestiary.
That card's like insanely good against Control as well, and like Tireless Tracker, there's a ton of really good cards. So there's also a possibility that like if you can run like multiple Ishkanas as well, like this deck could have a good matchup against Control, just being able to outgrind the 2 pull from tomorrow's. A good percentage of the time. Ishkana is on Torrential Gearhulk. It's bad against counterspells, but if all your cards are 2-for-1s, and you're signing up most of your removal, so your deck is just filled with 2-for-1s, Control can have a tough time as well. So it could actually potentially kind of try to do both. It could try to beat Mardu and also have a good matchup with Control. So
also MTG Speculator with the hot tech always. Prowling Sir Poplar.
That card is so good against Control. You run removal, but...
no, but it's just like, you're already burning through most of the removal anyways, just by presenting threat after threat after threat. And like, if you land a Sir Poplar and they're just out of removal in their hands, like, it's super rough. And like, you could even run the new hand disruption spell, Lay Bare the Heart, where you like look at their hand and take a non-legendary card.
Yeah, or I think Transgress is probably better, but...
it's not entirely clear. Like, Transgress only hits 3 or above.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to get their Harness Lightnings out of their hand, you're going to want Lay Bare the Heart.
Yeah, fair.
You know what I mean? And then your Prowling Sir Poplar just takes over the game. Anyways, it's a reasonable sideboard option if you want to have that edge against Control. Mm-hmm. It's just another sideboard option for sure.
Yeah.
So, I hinted at this deck already, and I'm actually kind of excited about it, is Green-White Midrange. Sam, you built this deck yourself, right?
It kind of builds itself because it's literally just like the most expensive cards in Standard. You put them in and they curve out pretty well.
Like money wise.
Just the most, so the deck is built around Ronus. So I realized that someone was like, oh, you can crew Heart of Kiran with it. And that's true. It's really strong. So I kind of built the deck around the Ronus Heart of Kiran interaction. And then I realized that like Big Gideon and Small Gideon fit really well with Heart of Kiran as well. Mm-hmm. And then I started just trying to figure out, okay, what else can we throw in here? So there's like Lambhole Pacifist.
Lambhole Pacifist is the really hot tech, I think.
It's really good. And one of the ways you can pump it is with a Rishkar or potentially a Nissa as well. We're kind of exploring a Nissa as an option.
Yep.
But the idea is that like, you're running Tireless Tracker and Verdurous Gearhulk.
Yeah.
And the reason you're playing Verdurous Gearhulk over Avacyn is that you really just want to be able to play something on sorcery speed as an option and pump your team.
And just put down so much power right away.
Exactly. And like Declaration Stone is a great option. Thraben Inspector is a great option.
Yep.
The worst card in your deck is Tireless Tracker, kind of.
Yeah, definitely.
Pretty much. And
maybe Verdurous Gearhulk is your worst card.
when Verdurous Gearhulk and Tireless Tracker are the worst cards in your deck, you're doing something right.
And all your cards are just on all the time. Like, there's no difficulty for this deck to just like land a Ronus and immediately have a 4-power creature.
Well, like turn 4, you very often have just like you turn 3 Ronus, crew your Heart of Kiran Bash, and then turn 4, like there's so many ways to end up with a 4-power creature.
And it feels like you're just hitting for 10 on turn 4, like majority of the game.
Yeah, so this deck is really consistent in terms of having a variety of ways to do extremely broken curve outs. So you can go Heart of Kiran on turn 2 or Lambhole Pacifist on turn 2. You can go like Lambhole Pacifist into Rishkar, pump it, and then swing. You can go like Heart of Kiran into either Gideon or into Ronus and swing. There's like a ton of really good options. A ton of really broken curve outs. You have Oath of Nissa for consistency. The deck is just consistently bashing for 10 to 12 damage on turn 4. It's really powerful, and it actually has an exceptionally good matchup against Mardu.
It is. We've tested it a bit, and it was just like super hard for me as the Mardu player to get through. Like I was really digging for unlicensed disintegrations because it was like the only way to deal with his threats.
So one of the big disadvantages of Mardu is that it's a fast deck, but if it has to block, or if it's the other deck, it has a better start than it. It's really tough for Mardu to come back because it has 1/1s for 1 scrap heaps that can't block.
Yeah, especially pre-board.
Yeah, for sure.
I think post-board it probably gets a little better for Mardu because they can do like Oath of Liliana and they can do Obnix, like that sort of Planeswalker switch. But even so, it just still feels like they're playing haymakers and you just have to respond.
I found that like on the play, green-white was barely behind. Like we're playing just as many aggressive, powerful spells as Mardu is.
Yeah.
And if you get ahead, like you just instantly win. And all your creatures have high toughness. None of them are bad at blocking. No. So if you're like Lambhole Pacifist is really good at blocking. Heart of Kirin is a 4 toughness blocker. Ronus is an indestructible blocker.
Yeah, true.
There's a lot. It's the deck is really good on defense as well.
Yeah.
And if you can even just stabilize, you can drop a Giddy and win the game. And it just feels like on defense the deck is way better than Mardu, and it's almost as good on offense. So yeah. I think we tested it had about 75% over, like not a big sample size, but I think like 10 matches or something like that.
Something like that.
So I think, yeah, if you want a deck that has a great matchup against Mardu, green-white's a great option. I think that one of the problems is that it's not great against green-black.
Yeah, so it loses to green-black because just green-black has better removal suite. So green-black is running like 3 to 4 Fatal Pushes and 3 to 4 Grass main board every time. And really the only removal available to green-white is like 3 to 4 Deccan Stones and then like 3 to 4 Stasis Snares. And Sam and I are still disagreeing on how many castouts they should play main deck, especially if they're playing Avacyn or not. Like these are all different things that you have to play around with the deck to get it exactly where you want in terms of your play style and what the actual correct build is. But with these particular like removal spells, you're at a huge disadvantage. When they're, playing a 2-drop and leaving up Fatal Push for your Heart of Kirin, and you have to like leave 3 mana up to deal with their Heart of Kirin, it's like totally incomparable in that way.
Yeah, that seems like totally right to me. A Deccan Stone is just not nearly as good as a removal spell as Grasp and Fatal Push, and it really punishes. And there's also, green-black has a lot of really powerful synergy, so if you don't hit any removal, especially on the draw as green-white, it's often green-black will just start doing insanely broken things. Yeah,
it still has the nut draw of turn 2, Winding Constrictor, turn 3, Rishgar, turn 4, Ballista, or whatever else.
Yeah. I think the two decks are both very good. I think if you look at the results from the standard leagues, green-white, for the first time in probably 3 months, posted a 5-0, and in fact it posted multiple 5-0s. They were the versions that were played on the competitive leagues had Nissa in them, I think. So this is different than what I was playing, and we could post those lists as well. But I think green-white, the main issue with it before was that it lost to Saheeli Combo like really badly. It was a horrible matchup for them, and with that gone, it's like one of the decks that stands to benefit the most. I'm always on this podcast plugging green-white. Yeah, and it's usually doesn't turn out. But it's just so many good cards in it. It has like
what more do you want?
It has like both Gideon's, Heart of Kirin, Ronus, like what else? And
it just wants removal.
It wants like, just give us like a Path to Exile. This deck is like good to go.
True.
I think it's good. I think it's a good deck.
Yeah. Alright, let's talk about the deck that we think beats the mid-range decks, but probably folds to Mardu pretty hard, is like Blue X Control.
I think probably blue-red control is the best one, but blue-black is also very good.
Blue-black is definitely available. I think blue-black is promising again because it has Fatal Push and Grasp of Darkness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's like a thing. But yeah, blue-red looks really promising, especially with Magma Spray now being in the format.
So I think the thing is, blue-black, for some reason, to me, always looks way better on paper. It looks great. It's just like, oh man, this is like the best control deck ever. And then for some reason, like there's 30 cards that are almost good enough for your deck, but not good enough. Yeah. And there's like two different cards that you run as 4-ofs in red. And there's like everything else is blue. Yeah. And those 8 cards you run in red are just barely better than those 8 cards the best 8 cards in black. And then everything else in black is like, there's way more options, but none of it's quite playable. Yeah. So blue-red just ends up being like a tiny bit better. Yeah. And I feel like that's the case here as well, where like, there's like, tons of like Murder, Ruinous Path, like there's so many good black cards that I just don't really want to run. And Harness Lightning and the 1-mana Exile from the new set.
Magma Spray.
Magma Spray is super good against Scrap Heap's Grandeur. So one of the main issues before was that Scrap Heap would just generate ridiculous amounts of value against control, and like if you didn't draw sometimes multiple Glimmers, you would just lose. Yeah. But the combination of Pull from Tomorrow and Magma Spray just give control like a really powerful answer to Scrap Heap, and then just like sort of like a trump card late game where like, a way to draw 7 cards that just like locks up late game in a way that Glimmer didn't. So for those 2 reasons, like Scrap Heap's way worse and Control's in way better shape.
Dude, Pull from Tomorrow might be like the new best card in Standard sort of thing.
I think it's like it's like the best card in Standard that's never going to be a 4-of. You know what I mean? Like it's so we were comparing the card to Sphinx's Rev. right? Sphinx's Revolution.
Yeah, this is like the natural comparison. Everyone's doing that comparison, yeah.
A lot of people think Sphinx's Rev is way better. I'm not so convinced.
Yeah, I think this might actually be better than Sphinx's Rev.
Here are my explanation. So when you draw like 3 to 4 plus cards, with Pull from Tomorrow, you've already have like 5 to 6 lands in play. Yeah. You're drawing 3 or 4 more cards. Yeah. You're gonna have too many lands. Like discarding a land isn't even a downside. Yeah. So it kind of nets you an additional card at the cost of like 4 or 5 life. And I think that's like maybe not better, but like very close.
Very close, yeah.
I think it's thinking of it as like draw 4, discard 1 as draw 3 is not accurate at all. Draw 4, discard 1
is way better.
Way better, right? It's almost like draw 3.8 or whatever. Like, so I think like gaining life is really good, and I'm not saying that it's actually better than Sphinx's Rev, but I think it's very comparable. I think it almost nets you an additional card at the cost of some life.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just the one thing that the Gear Hulk decks from before were really hard pressed to do was like, yeah, they land a Gear Hulk, but then they were really dependent upon their Gear Hulks to close out the game. Like, they really didn't have any other win conditions, whereas now Pull from Tomorrow in a strange way is a win condition.
It's a trump card. It just sort of like ends the game, and it makes it really hard for other decks. So we kind of talked about how the potential for Green-Black Delirium to outgrind Control, and this will be one of the ways that Control gets out of that.
Exactly.
I think Control will be actually be in a lot of trouble against Green-Black, except for Pull from Tomorrow sort of changes the dynamic.
Definitely.
Where if you're going to draw 9 cards, that's so much better than anything that recurring issue does. That I think that kind of offers like an alternate route for victory for Control for sure.
Definitely. Some other interesting cards. Kefnet is bad.
I don't think it's good.
I don't think it's good. We said it wasn't good, and I still don't think it's good.
Have we mentioned the potential for Daniel Fournier, one of the legends of Toronto Magic, to make it onto the podcast?
Oh, I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Yeah, so I talked to Daniel Fournier, and he actually said he's interested in doing like a post-PT report, because he is going to be at Pro Tour Amonkhet.
He's not a very nice guy, but he's pretty good at Magic, so...
No, Fournier's a really nice guy.
He's also a nice guy.
Yeah, he's really nice. And he's very good at Magic.
Yeah, so anyway, when Kefnet came out, he posted it on Facebook, and then he was like, it's not very good, and I was just like being a smartass, like, this is a massive upgrade over Dynavolt Tower, you fool. and then now I think it sucks. So, he was right. He can come on the podcast to give you guys better advice than me. I agree, it's not very good. I think it's okay. Like, it's not a dead card, it's not horrible. I think it's good against other control decks, but it's definitely not good against Mardu. I'm not having been impressed with it.
Okay, cool. Sweltering Suns is another interesting one that, again, just sort of seems to miss the mark a little bit.
It's good against Green-Black, so I think the question is how much Green-Black is there, and I mean, the thing is, like, sometimes your opponent just plays a Tireless Tracker, and then you Sweltering Suns it, and it's not even that bad.
That's true.
You killed a 3-drop with a 3-drop.
Yep.
It can cycle, which is definitely a nice upside as well. The cycling is really expensive.
It's really expensive.
I think you can often hose 2 creatures with this consistently in Green-Black, like maybe half the time or more against Green-Black.
Yeah. And
I think that that's quite relevant. So I think it's pretty good, but I think that it's not nearly as good against Mardu as I would have hoped.
Yeah.
They just cut more creatures for more points.
Yeah, that's true.
That's pretty much what happens this set, so like the sweepers are even worse.
Definitely.
I think it's like pretty, like I almost want to just side it out against the biggest aggro deck in the format, which is sad.
Yeah, true.
I think if the thing is, if Green-Black comes back, I think you might just want to run like 1 or 2 Dynavolt Tower over it. Dynavolt Tower is better against Green-Black than Sweltering Suns. And if Sweltering Suns is really bad against Mardu, or like not great against Mardu.
Yeah, you might just want to bolt.
You might just want to, I mean, everyone hates Dynavolt Tower but me, but...
Yeah, everyone hates it.
Everyone hates it. I think it's great. I think it's a great card. You're also generating a ton of energy with Glimmers that you're not using at all. And especially like post board, you can maybe side in some Aether Meltdowns against Mardu. I don't know if you keep your towers in, but maybe like 1 tower is reasonable. Over Sweltering Suns, like I don't know. I'm
just like, it's so minimal to me. It makes like so little difference. It's just like
it's pretty. It's like a win con. I think it can be like pretty important in control, but yeah, if it's just a 1 card in a deck, it's not a huge deal either way.
Dude, what about like Commit to Memory though? It hits non-land permanents. Just get your Resolved Gideon second from the top, and all you do, you get to keep a 2/2.
It's pretty good when your opponent's playing Mardu and keeps a 1-lander and then passes for 6 turns in a row, and then you can memory them.
Yeah, we played a very bad playtest game where I kept a 1-lander like on the play or on the draw.
It was the play. It was the play.
It was bad. It was on the play.
It was on the play.
It wasn't. It was a bad keep. And I had 6 cards in hand, and Sam had like 3, and he just like memoried from his graveyard.
I was playing Control, and Masco was playing Mardu Vehicles, and I memoried him for massive value.
Yeah, that was absurd.
So I think
that's never happened.
The memory half of this card is like bad, like
very bad.
You're almost never casting it.
Yeah,
but if you're not playing white, it is a poor man's cast out, and
it is indeed a poor man's cast out.
That can be okay. I think like it's an answer to Control, and sometimes like Control decks want like a 1 or 2 like. You don't want Gideon to resolve, but it will occasionally, and it's sometimes nice to have an answer.
Yep, definitely. It's better than Flame Lash, or
yeah, it's better than Flame Lash for
or whatever else people were trying to make work.
Mm-hmm. It might actually even be better than Ruinous Path. Maybe it's an instant, right?
Yeah, it is an instant.
It's worse than Hero's Downfall.
I mean, it is way worse than
Hero's Downfall. It's not even comparable. It's like
so much worse than Hero's Downfall.
If Hero's Downfall cost 4, that would probably still run Hero's Downfall. but it's not an option. So here we go. All
right, let's move on to Haven.dec. I don't have a lot to say about this deck. I hate playing against it.
Yeah, so it's definitely a control deck. It's a dedicated control deck.
Yeah.
It sort of takes out Torrential Gearhulk. A best way to kind of frame the deck is that it takes out Torrential Gearhulks and it tries to run a totally creatureless package.
Yeah.
And it's good against control decks if it resolves Haven, but it's bad against control decks because it doesn't often resolve.
Yeah, none of your cards do anything.
Yeah. So one of the things to note about this deck is that Censor's super good. We haven't talked about Censor yet. Censor's excellent. It's an easy 4 of. And the other nice thing is that there's a draw spell, instant speed draw 4 with Cycling Blue.
Yeah, draw 2.
For 4. And that card's like pretty comparable to Glimmer. I mean, like I was talking to Massible, I'm like, do we just run this over Glimmer if we cut the towers? And it's probably a no because the Scry 2's okay, but being able to cycle for 1 is really good, especially against like if your opponent plays a Toolcraft on turn 1 and you just cycle.
Yep.
Gets you 1 closer to your answers. So that's not really much of a downgrade. And if you're running, 8 cycling cards, but then the problem is that you start adding your cycling cards. You run like the 4/4 flyers that scry 1.
Yeah, cards. Well, it scries for blue, I guess. I mean, sorry, it cycles for blue.
Yeah, exactly. It cycles for blue.
This is the only reason you have it in your deck.
Haven does trigger with discard. So I've seen builds with like Lightning Axe sort of strategy as well, where you can like Lightning Axe temper.
Yeah.
So when I started playing Blue-Red Dynavolt Tower for the first time, this was before it was a Pro Tour thing. I was just like months ago. I was playing like a Blue-Red deck that was running like 1 or 2 Rise from the Tides and 4 Dynavolt Tower.
Yeah.
And it was like very similar to what I'm describing. It was running like a ton of discards like Tormenting Voice, a Cathartic Reunion, Take Inventory, that sort of thing. And Haven is just like a strict upgrade in this deck to Dynavolt Tower.
Definitely.
So there's actually like, if you look at the Pro Tour top 8 from, was it
Aether Revolt or Kaladesh?
I think it was Kaladesh.
Kaladesh.
If you look at the Kaladesh Pro Tour top 8, there's a couple blue-red spells decks in that top 8 that were like discard spell sort of effects.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is take out the Glimmers, put in this draw 4, and take out the Dynavolt Towers, put in Haven, and make a couple other changes, and you've got yourself a pretty solid deck that's probably a strict upgrade over a Pro Tour top 8 deck.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cool. I think there's like, I don't like that if you just lose if you don't resolve Haven, but...
Yeah, so it's obviously terrible against control. I tested it against Mardu a little bit, and it seemed like a slightly unfavorable matchup for the Haven deck, but not unreasonable. Like, there were definitely certain games where the Haven deck just, like, had answers and then took over the game, and nothing that Mardu deck could produce would actually, like, impact the board in any way. That's my biggest qualm with the deck. It's just, like, if they answer your first few things, you just can't really interact in any favorable way at all. So anyways, whatever. That's just my cons with the deck. But I think it's perfectly good.
Do you expect to see some Drakes flying around in a month from now or 2?
I don't expect Drakes flying around just because there's like so many cheap answers in the format. Like Fragmentize is just going to be like everywhere.
Yeah, so that's the thing too, is that the deck is like very fragile to enchantment removal.
Yeah.
And if that ever becomes a main board thing with cycling, the deck's in huge trouble. I think one of the nice things about this deck, if you are going to play it, definitely have creatures in your sideboard for sure. That is like a huge way that you shore up post-board matchups, is like 4 Thing in the Ice is like very, very good. I would be tempted to just run 4 Thing in the Ice in the sideboard, at least to start, and side all 4 in every time. Because your opponent's going to side in all their enchantment removal. And you could even side out like a Drake Haven or two. Maybe you don't, I don't know. But you definitely want to side in creatures. Like Nimbus of Frost is an option. Torrential Gearhulk is an option. The sideboard is a 1 or 2 of. And just like siding into a package that doesn't, so you don't rely on the Drake Havens entirely post-board, because you're just going to have a really rough time if that's your
if that's your plan.
Your only game plan, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You need win conditions in other ways.
Yeah. I don't expect the deck to last forever. I think we're going to see this deck at the SCG Open for sure.
Yes.
I have a feeling it might not do as well as the meta evolves, especially when you have a deck as good as Mardu around.
Running around.
And it's like, not a good matchup for them, but
no.
It does have a very powerful endgame for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, imagine if Mardu just starts running Anguished Unmaking in the main board instead of like Stasis Snares, just to like eat anything.
The deck is very easy to answer if it becomes a big thing.
Yeah.
At the same time, it could just spike it. I mean, blue-red, Dynamo Towers. No Torrential Gearhulks had like 2 of the top 8 spots. But this seems like very similar in what it's doing. There's a lot of different builds. There's white builds with Cast Out as well.
Yep.
There's blue-red builds. There's blue-red-white. There's a whole bunch of different options.
Yeah,
lots to explore. We can post a few lists and give them a try. I think it's a strong deck.
Definitely. Let's talk about the Cycle Combo deck that was posted on Channel Fireball a few weeks ago, or like a week ago. I forget who posted it, but you've probably heard of it by now. It's essentially a combo deck that tries to resolve new perspectives and then cycle through the majority of its deck, or a bunch of cards, then Shadow of the Grave to get those cards back, untapping lands in the meantime, generating a ton of mana, and then second sunning for the victory. Okay, so I'm just going to elaborate on what you said there. Sure. So there's 2 cards that generate mana that you cycle. So New Perspective says you cycle and your cycling costs are 0. Yes. There are 2 cards that generate mana. One of them is the 6 mana in green. Kefnet Monitor. Yes. And you cycle it and it brings a land from your basic land from your deck into play untapped. Unfortunately, it also brings in a desert. Or a desert. So you could beat Saheeli combo before, but now that's not a thing. Because you can play the one desert that pings a player. Yeah, exactly. and that that was being run. Yeah, but you can't do that anymore. But the other one is the Vizier of Tumbling Sands. Wow, Massimo is not even looking. He's just sitting back and just naming. I'm just cards. Here prepared. Okay. So that guy, when you cycle it, untaps a land. So the version that we're running is running 4. So there's a few different options, but Enchanted Land taps for 2. Yeah. So there's one that games 3, one that investigates. I think maybe the game 3 might be better, the investigate might be better. I'm not sure, but you're running those, so that'll untap for 2 of any color. Then you have the 6/5 that's fetching a land. Yep. And then the idea is that you have about 40 plus cycling cards in your deck. So you just so you go off just cycling, and you hit one of your 4. Vizier of Tumbling Sands. Wow. Okay, that was on the... Okay. Sorry, Shadow of the Grave? Shadow of the Grave, yes. Oh, sorry, you get like Shadow of the Grave. Yeah. So the deck is probably bad. It loses to counterspells. It's not great against Mardu. but it is surprisingly consistent, and if you want a super fun F&M deck, this deck will like 4-0 in F&M. Oh, for sure. It's very good. It's actually like extremely consistent. So... the reason why is that there's a ton of good cycling cards. That's it. The cycling costs are really cheap, and they're just cheap good. Cycling costs that are interactive. So you have like Cast Out, you have Censor. Censor is an option, and so the deck can actually do stuff. It's not like totally just like sitting there dirtling trying to go for an infinite combo. It can generate some value. It can survive. It ramps, and the combo, when you cast New Perspectives, you also draw 3. You go off like 90% of the time. Like you just win the game on the spot, like 90%. As soon as you resolve 90. Yeah, and there's no way to interact with removal, right? So it's a very powerful combo. You can't interact with removal. You're ramping into it, and there's interactions, ways to survive it, and I think the deck's good. I think it's not going to be tier 1. I think it's going to be like an Aetherflux Reservoir type of deck. I think it's way better than Aetherflux. Really? I think it's considered. I think you're not wrong to draw that comparison. Okay. But the deck is way more consistent, in my opinion. It's not a 2-card combo. It's like a 1-card combo. That's true. And there's less ways to interact. And I think it's also your post board's considerably better as well. For sure. Yeah. I think the deck's good. I think my dream, what I really want to have happen is someone
like be in the feature match of the Pro Tour.
Like just doing this for like
round 4,
10-minute turns,
and just going off in this 10-minute like untap tap untap. You know, because the deck when it goes off, it's very impressive. It's like 100+ sequence action to win the game with Second Suns.
Jeez, sounds awful.
It's super fun. I was actually like I lost to it multiple times. And I had fun losing. I usually don't have fun losing. I'm usually really cranky when I lose, but I had fun losing to this combo. It's like very good. It's a good deck. It's actually better than it looks. So give it a try. Take it to your local FNM or bring it to a big tournament and
crush some noobs with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about another deck. Black-Red Discard, probably featuring Hazoret in some capacity. I tried a build of this that was like featuring Prized Amalgam, and I never cast Hazoret a single time. So it seemed like it wasn't really the right home. And I was just trying to get back my Prized Amalgams a bunch, and it just wasn't great. But I think there is a Black-Red Discard deck. It's very hard to build properly all the time. I think so to just like hit Hazoret on turn 4 consistently.
I think some of the builds we were experimenting with were not like that ideal.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to know how to build it. I think the concept of Hazoret being a very powerful card. You did definitely resolve Hazoret because I remember you.
Oh yeah, I have resolved it, but I never really like feel like I'm bashing with it on turn 4 and making like a really big impact.
Yeah. So if you Insolent Neonate and then discard a Haunted Dead, then you start like going off discarding your Prized Amalgams and stuff. It's very possible to end up with one or less cards in hand on turn 4. This is like the only deck that can do it consistently.
Yeah, that's true.
It discards a lot of cards.
But it discards way too many cards, I found. It's just like, I want to discard my Hazards just because I need to discard stuff.
Well, that's the thing. Like, there's probably ways to build it.
Yes.
That get around some of that. And I think maybe some of our builds, like, it's really tough to build because you really want to find the right balance of discard targets and discard cards.
Yeah, and if you draw like one half and not the other half, things fall apart really fast.
The upside, though, is that, of course, the times it works and you have Prized Amalgams, you just go off.
You just go off.
And it's very powerful.
Yeah.
I think that Hazoret, I think it's excellent in this deck just because if Hazoret attacks on turn 4, it's like definitely one of the best cards in Standard. In theory, if it didn't have the downside of not being able to attack, it would be one of the best cards in Standard. And I think this is the sort of deck that can sort of put Hazoret in a position where he's at his best. The deck can also outgrind control. Like very easily.
Yeah, because you just get one or two Prized Amalgams. It's really hard for them to interact.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really bad against Mardu because it's bad at blocking. But I think it has the potential, and I think Hazoret is a pretty powerful beater.
We don't have a polished list for this. I'll revisit this. Maybe I'll post a deck list a little bit later to try and find something. I'm trying to figure out how many copies of Collective Brutality I want to play because it seems like in almost every matchup, like 2 of the modes are relevant at any one time. Like against Mardu, the -2/-2 drain 2, and maybe even look at their hand and take an instant or sorcery is pretty good. And then like against Control, the drain 2 and look at your hand is very good. Against Midrange, look at your hand's probably not that good, but like -2/-2 and drain 2 might be okay. Like it has some room for like really intelligent deck building and really like tight execution. But it feels very draw dependent, and I didn't like the inconsistency in that way.
Yeah, that's fair.
The power's there, the consistency isn't always there.
Yep.
The last deck I want to talk about, I forgot to put this on the list, is Black-White Midrange. I was testing Black-White Midrange against 4-color Saheeli, and it was abysmal. Like, awful. Like, it just felt terrible. And like Black-White Saheeli, I'd like get to one card, and then they'd just be like, Chandra, and I'd be like, what do I do? Like, I can't, that eats my Kalitas. I'm like, what do I do now? Or, they just start drawing like 2 or 3 cards a turn somehow, and I just immediately get run over. The deck has a reasonable matchup against Mardu, and it's unclear how good it is against the other mid-range decks, but it's pretty rough against Control. It's just essentially just another mid-range deck.
So, yeah, Control preys on like all of the mid-range decks.
Yeah, definitely.
I think there was when Kaladesh came out, there was a white-black, I think it was called white-black Tempo, but it seemed like pretty similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that deck was good for a few weeks. I think that, again, like, it was bad against Combo. But I think one of the advantages, if you kind of relate it to green-white Tempo, you lose some of the powerful green cards, like Ronus specifically, but you gain the black removal of Fatal Push and Grasp.
Yeah.
And just like in theory, and Liliana is super good too.
Mm-hmm.
I think just in theory, like the package of like Grasp, Fatal Push, Lily, Small Gideon, Big Gideon, Heart of Kieran.
Yeah.
That's like 2/3 of your deck.
Yeah.
And you're pretty much good to go at that point. You could run Thraben Inspector, you could not. There's a lot of good options. Like Glorybringer Initiate's okay too. There's not that many good am I wrong to say there's not that many good 2-drops?
Yeah, so you run like Ballista and
I don't think you run Ballista.
Yeah, I mean I was running Ballista because of combo.
Yeah, then you take the Ballistas out.
Yeah, you take the Ballistas out. So yeah, the 2-drops are kind of not great. There's room for improvement in this deck.
And that's what pushed you more towards control, I guess, was just not having the early game.
Yeah, like you just don't have the way to pressure. And the thing is, like, you really start looking at it like, oh, I'll put Thraben Inspector. Well, then I can put Toolcraft Exemplar in. And then it's like, you're Mardu but not splashing on License Disintegration, which is just such a good card.
It's like, well, I might as well just... Because you run Scrap Heap. Oh, Scrap Heap's good.
And Scrap Heap
so
and
you're running Scrap Heap, you're running Heart of Kieran, you're running probably Thraben Inspector if you're tempo. Lily. Yeah. You can just run a Boy Blacklist with Lily on it instead of...
I know, but it's just like, just play on License Disintegration,
yeah,
man.
That's the thing.
So good.
That's the thing. I mean, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I mean, Lily's a good card too.
Yep.
Maybe that deck could like out-control some of the other Mardu decks.
Yeah, it's supposed to beat Mardu. It's supposed to have like Lily on 3 and Lily on 5 and like Avacyn's and stuff. And it does. It always goes to the top deck war, and then after that it's like 50-50.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think this deck is the kind of deck that really wants card advantage really badly. Like, I really just want to play Pull from Eternity in this deck. Like, every time, but it's just so hard on the mana. And like, I'll see if I can find like an Esper list that really works, but it's getting there.
Esper control is definitely pretty good right now as well. It's just like blue-black control with cast out. Kinda, and you can run Gideons and stuff too.
Yeah, it's. I wish we had more concrete decks and like ideas for you guys, but like literally, it's been 2 days since the bannings, and like we've just been deck building and like trying to get back on our feet after these like surprise bannings, because we were pretty confident with things on Monday when the original ban and restrict announcement came out.
Yeah, that's fair. It's also exam period for me and Massimo.
Yeah, like I just finished my last exam.
I finished mine like a few days ago, so we've also been in like crunch mode, and like as much as I love Magic, we're supposed to put school first. That's what my mom keeps telling me. So yeah, we've also been very busy, but I think we've talked about some cool decks. What cards have we not discussed that are worth talking about?
Glorybringer.
Yeah.
So I think there's room for like a red-green stompy deck. So you have like Servant of the Conduit, and you have Channeler Initiate, and then you probably want some Glorybringers and stuff, and you're just like, and maybe even like Arlen Cord, you know what I mean? Like just like play like red-green stompy like dudes. And what I like about Channeler Initiate is that like early on it ramps you, but later on it's actually like a strong body. And you have like strong cards like Sylvan Advocate, and you have like Ronus. And I don't know if this card's good, but like Samit, Voice of Dissent.
What card is that?
That's the new one with Flash and Double Strike and Haste.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So
okay,
like,
that's a lot of keywords.
Yeah,
wow,
a lot of keywords.
It's a mythic rare.
It is a mythic rare.
It actually seems okay. I haven't actually tested it.
I haven't tested it, but I don't think it's good. It seems just worse than Avacyn. It seems like worse than Glorybringer.
It matches up very poorly against Avacyn.
Yeah, very poorly against Avacyn. And also you have like the Green Gear Hulk, which is like a great stompy card. So just like ramping into like huge threats that close out the game. And then you do have access to 1 and 2 mana removal with Magma Spray and Harness Lightning.
Yep.
So like there's semblances of a deck here, but it seems like relatively low power, and like you want to be playing like Chandra, Torch of Defiance, but it doesn't fit that well into the strategy. So maybe there's just like a red-green mid-range deck, but then it just looks worse than like green-black, like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you're running good cards. I could see that being a thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, if the Harness Lightnings are key for sure. Like they just give you interaction, and that's something that green generally lacks. So
exactly,
you have like a lot of cheap, powerful spells early that can kill stuff. So I think that's like a huge upside for it as well. That you could probably manage some of the faster decks and shut down the green-black synergy.
Yeah, definitely.
And then once you do that, your kind of bigger stuff seems a lot better.
Yep. Another interesting one is Nissa. I wasn't too hot on Nissa in 4 colors Saheeli, which seemed like the natural home for her. She seemed okay. She just seemed worse than Chandra. And, there were just some matchups where she just didn't do anything. Like against Mardu Vehicles, she was just like, didn't do anything. But I think there might be home for like a blue-green sort of ramp deck. Like there's some really powerful like blue-green cards that are like hitting the space. I think Spring to Mind is like very good.
The issue I have with Nissa and ramp is that she doesn't protect herself, and ramp decks are generally, if you're spending turns ramping, you're generally not spending turns building up a board. Which makes protecting her even harder. And I think if you can only cast her late game, she's not very exciting.
No, I agree.
I do want to point out that, like, during the Bant Coco era, Nissa would have been, like, an excellent addition to this deck as, like, a 1-2 of. So I think she's has the potential to be quite standard playable. I think that, like Bant, if you look at the old Bant Coco list, like, they would often grind out, like, these ridiculous 45 turn games. Yeah. And they really wanted ways to push through damage. Yeah. And she could very quickly, like, on turn 3, like, plus, and then start minusing and hit any creature in your deck. And it would hit 55 cards in your deck. Yeah, true. On turn 4. Yeah. And then late game, they'd have 15 lands in play, and she'd be a 13 loyalty planeswalker that's bashing for 10 in the area. So she would have been insane. So she definitely is absolutely standard playable in the right deck. Mm-hmm. I think that you probably want, like, a blue-green tempo deck that runs, like, Duskwash Recruiter. Or, like, cards that go... Like,
oh, wow. I didn't think about this angle. This is interesting.
This is, like...
She's just the new Coco, man.
She's, like, the new Coco. Yeah, well, kind of, but she just, like, you can't hit her off Coco, which is unfortunate as well.
Well, Coco's not in the format, so it doesn't matter.
There's a lot of reasons why that doesn't work.
But I mean, it's interesting because, like, every turn you're just flipping a card over and putting it into play. If everything in your deck costs 3 or less...
Yeah. So you want to be able to get ahead... I think she's, like, at her worst in a format where there's, like, a deck like Mardu. Yeah. And she's at her best in a format where she's in the fastest deck in the format, and that deck is a blue-green deck. And I think that has existed in the past. Yeah. And it could exist again. So I think that's something to look out for. If there's, like, a blue-green or, like, 3-color tempo list that comes out anytime in the future, she would probably be a good addition. Because if you're ahead, then she protects herself. And if she protects herself, then she's pretty strong.
Yeah, definitely. She's in an interesting place. I didn't think about that, and you've opened my eyes.
Oh, good.
All right.
It's a good card, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything else with Amonkhet I actually want to talk about. I think we've touched on all the things that we've been thinking about moving forward. We hope this was interesting to you. We hope that this information is actually useful to you. Sam, what are you going to play at the PPTQ on Saturday?
I am probably going to play blue-red spells. So here's my breakdown of the different levels, right? Okay. You could be a fish and play Mardu. Right? Or you could be like a level 1 sort of person. That's level 0. Level 1, okay, is playing green-black or like green-white. Yeah. Or like some sort of mid-range list that would have lost to Saheeli. But Saheeli's gone. But all the Mardu players are still around. So you're going to prey on those guys. Yeah. Right? Or you could be level 2. This is where I'm going to come in. I'm going to come in with the control list. Yeah. And I'm going to target all of the green-black players. They're going to be targeting the Mardu players. And I'm just going to, like, hopefully I don't run into any Mardu. That's my game plan. How about you? What are you thinking of?
Yeah, I'm thinking about either...
Mardu's actually a totally fun choice.
Like, probably just sticking with Mardu. And I'm just gonna, like, go to
fish.
I'm just gonna try to up it to, like, 4 Fatal Push.
You could try the vehicles version as well.
And like, even something like Sky Sovereign, like, 1 Sky Sovereign main board could, like, go, like, a long way.
I think, like, if you could just bring up a green-black list that was, or a Mardu list that was really popular when green-black was popular, maybe, like, at the beginning of Kaladesh, and just sort of start there and explore those options. I think you'd probably be in way better shape than trying to use a current list.
Dude, fumigating the sideboard's probably still good.
Oh, dude, yeah. Fumigating the sideboard. You got to meta really hard against.
Dusk to Dawn is now in the format. Oh, you just get them.
It's actually good, yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's like kill some of your own dudes, but, like, as soon as you flash it back, you win the game.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. So, yeah, we'll have to explore some of those options.
Definitely.
I think, just meta, if you're going to play Mardu, meta against green black super hard, because that's going to be where people are. And I think at the SCG Open we'll see probably a lot of those decks coming back as well.
Definitely. All right, I think that's all we got for you guys this week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of MTG Speculator Podcast. We really, really appreciate it, and we hope you like the content. We should have an episode in 2 weeks, and we'll be covering Pro Tour Amonkhet, so hopefully some spicy brews or something come out of that. But maybe we were right on the money. We'll have to see. A reminder that we're on Twitter. Follow us at MTG Spec Podcast for episode updates. And you can send us feedback or send us a question anytime. We're on YouTube now, so you can like and subscribe to us if you like. We're also going to have a Facebook page set up so that you guys can sort of have a community to, like, discuss amongst yourselves if you're not a Reddit person or not, like, a YouTube person. So we're branching out to different social media avenues. Send us an email at mtgspec@gmail.com. tell your friends about the show as much as you can. I really, really appreciate us. We just want to grow as much as we can and just share our ideas with the world. And finally, check us out on mtgspeculator.com. That's the home for the podcast. You'll find everything there fully archived. And we're looking forward to seeing you guys soon. Enjoy the Pro Tour.
Bye.
See you guys.
Hello, and welcome to MTG Speculator Podcast, episode number 28. Today I'm here with my co-host.
Why are you yelling?
Massimo.
Hey. Oh my god.
And it's going to be a good episode. We're talking about standard and rotations and bannings, and then no bans, and then bans, and then no bans. Yeah, this is a great intro. What else am I supposed to say? That's good. That's like a good intro.
Dude, I'm just gonna put it, I'm gonna make it the outro. That's gonna be the outro.
Okay, alright.